Welcome in to the Daily Roto-Sharks Football Podcast. I'm Jeremy Conn here and joined by Justin Carlucci and Sean Hoy as well. We're going to break down week one of the NFL DFS slate. Looking forward to this. We've been talking about preseason football, and Justin, I know you and I, it wasn't necessarily our forte trying to dive in, but now it's the full slate. It's time to get in action.
Yeah, man. I can't believe it's finally here. We've been working hard all preseason here at Daily Roto Sharks, trying to dig in and get ready. And I can't wait till everybody sees these sheets. Ben and CG and everyone have been working really hard on them, and they're going to be awesome. What's going on, Sean?
Not a whole lot. Just a whole lot of players to break down. I mean, week one, just a lot of options, like just ridiculous amounts.
Well, let's get into it. Let's talk quarterbacks. I'll start with you, Justin, because it's an interesting slate. I was discussing with Sean off the air that, when I initially started making some lineups a couple weeks ago, I'd like to see where I'm at from then and there. And I do the same things when it comes to picking football games without looking at where the money's going, everything. I just lay down kind of what I like and what's interesting, and then I follow all that. I tie some of that into my DFS picks. But let's look at quarterbacks, because Marcus Mariota was a guy that I was all in on when I first saw it. And then talking to a bunch of people, it seems like it might be rather chalky for tournaments. But there are some interesting games this weekend if you're only going to go with the Sunday slate. Monday has a couple of spots I'd like to talk about as well. But give me your thoughts on the QBs and maybe where you're looking.
First of all, Mariota, I'm a Titans fan, and I'm totally unbiased. And I like him a lot more if Khalil Mack doesn't play. That guy's a beast. He by far had all the most advanced metrics in pass rushing from PFF, and Mariota wasn't great under pressure last year. So I like Mariota a lot more if Khalil Mack doesn't play. If I'm looking at DraftKings, I'm looking at Carson Wentz because he's 5.3s. I think he's ridiculously underpriced. I mean, for 3 times value, you're telling me he can't get like 15 and change DraftKings points. The Birds got a decent team total, and some interesting numbers on Carson Wentz. Without Lane Johnson last year, he averaged almost 4 points less per game than with him. When Lane Johnson played, he averaged 17.5 DraftKings points per game, which is well over 3 times value. And that kind of correlates with the way Carson Wentz played last year. When he was under pressure, according to Pro Football Focus, he only had a 29% completion percentage. But when he had a clean pocket, he completed 68% of his passes. And I think Carson Wentz has a real shot on DraftKings to return some significant value.
Now, just give me your thoughts initially, Sean, what quarterbacks maybe you're looking at, and then we'll dive more into it.
Well, I don't really love any quarterbacks, but there's just a few plays. I think for cash games, you want to look Mariota, Carr, and Cousins. It's all in that price range, 64 to 6,800. Obviously, Mariota has a solid matchup, and he's probably going to be throwing a decent amount at home. Cousins, I mean, they're kind of short on running back. I mean, Sproles and Blunt are kind of old, and that's Wentz. My bad. Cousins.
You're looking at Fat Rob and
you're looking at Fat Rob and Thompson, but I mean, the receivers are pretty solid, and Terrell Pryor is way bigger size wise than Darby at corner. And Philadelphia has a pretty solid front seven, so I don't really see Kelly getting much room to run week one. And Cousins last year didn't have a single game, as far as I know, where he had single-digit fantasy points. So
interesting enough with that game, the Eagles they're like a 1-point favorite. Maybe the line moves a little bit coming up Sunday, but maybe telling you a little something about how Vegas feels about that team. Just staying with the quarterbacks, because I feel like week one, people are going to try to get their stud running back. We're team people already with their lineups, trying to get Bell and Johnson in there. Which means you're typically going to go with a cheap quarterback. What do you think about some of the high price guys? I mean, would you look Rodgers? I like Wilson this week. I actually think he's going to. I think a lot of problems from last year stem from that high ankle sprain he had, and I think we'll see him moving around a little bit more. But any chance, Justin, you're going up and spending a little bit of money on quarterbacks?
Yeah, definitely. I think Wilson he'll carry some ownership, and yeah, he's healthy. I wrote about a lot of these guys in an article that'll hopefully be published later today for DRS. But yeah, Wilson's healthy now, and all those receivers in Seattle have plus advantages according to Pro Football Focus. Doug Baldwin, I think, has the best on the slate this week in terms of advantage in one-on-one situations. So, but but all those receivers are in good spots. And Jimmy Graham, this Green Bay defense got shredded last year. Russell Wilson's not going to throw 5 interceptions again. That everybody's going to go game log hunting like last year. I think you're right. I like Russell Wilson. I think he's got a pretty high floor, honestly.
Yeah, and Sean, just looking at it, on the other side, Aaron Rodgers, you're talking about another guy that I think he's matchup proof. I don't care what defense he's playing. I remember a few years ago in season long, I benched Peyton Manning. He was playing at Tennessee, and Tennessee had the #1 defense. I think it was a Thursday night game, and he threw 5 touchdowns. I was so pissed at myself. So I don't think you can necessarily just go away from a stud. And yeah, correct me if I'm wrong, I think Jordy Nelson caught 2 touchdowns against the Seattle defense last year. To me, Rodgers is a matchup-proof guy if you want to pay for him. And Breeze is on Monday night. So, Tom Brady just played on Thursday. So typically the top 3 guys you would look at from maybe a season-long standpoint, but we know they're putting up big numbers, and the high-price guys on the slate, they're all separated. So I don't know if anybody's going to go to Rodgers against Seattle. But I think you said you weren't fond of a ton of these quarterbacks. So I'm assuming you're going to try to find value on the slate.
Yeah, I'll probably be value hunting, but Rodgers at 7,000 on DraftKings is just a steal from a player perspective, even though he is up against probably the first or second best secondary. He's got 3 solid wide receivers, a pass-catching running back, and a solid tight end. So, Rodgers at 7,000 with a bunch of options is pretty appealing. But like Wilson and Cam Newton are also appealing, and they're right in that same range, because they can both move around in the pocket a little bit, maybe get some rushing yards, a rushing touchdown, which is more than passing touchdown. But with Wilson, even though he does have that matchup, and it's probably most likely going to be a shootout for him, he does have a couple of running backs that can do some work in that game, including Fat Lacey, who's back in Lambeau week 1, So we'll see how that goes. But I'm also going to be looking a little bit at Tom Savage. I'm not going to go huge on Tom Savage, but I think Houston's going to be very motivated week 1 to make those people in Houston happy after that flood.
Yeah, so I like that Houston game. I'm intrigued by it just because of the narrative. I hate saying it, but, we've seen the inspirational game. The Saints, after they went through Hurricane Katrina, came back. Nobody expected them to win, and I think they beat the Falcons. They had a punt block in that game. So a lot of crazy stuff that's very capable of happening. Matt Ryan was the other guy I didn't throw out as one of the highest-priced guys going up against the Bears. But I do want to get to – I've heard a lot of people kind of talk about some interesting quarterbacks, Andy Dalton being one. I'm in Baltimore. I have no problem with people that want to play A.J. Green because I think he's probably going to get his. But I think this is going to be an utterly low-scoring game, and it's a game that – I'm not taking a kicker or defense, and I'm probably staying away from personally. The other thing I wanted to bring up, and one of the things I was going to say about Monday night is I love the Minnesota Vikings on Monday night, and I think Bradford's going to have a good game. So if you're playing the Sunday-Monday carryover, if you're just playing that Sunday night in the Monday night because we have the doubleheader, I'm going to be all over Sam Bradford in those tournaments. Justin, give me your thoughts. Any other quarterbacks stand out to you?
Yeah, just going through the list here, I think you'll see some Carson Palmer and Le'Veon Bell lineups together because Palmer's really cheap and he's in a good spot. We know David Johnson gets a lot of the red zone looks, but Fitzgerald's in a really good spot, so there's no reason Palmer can't throw 2 touchdowns to some of these guys outside. I hear a lot of people saying they're going to punt Brian Hoyer, and maybe they're falling in love with Marquise Goodwin. I don't know, man. You look back at that game log last year when Hoyer played a couple of weeks with Chicago, and it looks pretty appetizing. It looks pretty good. But Chicago actually had the second best run blocking efficiency when Hoyer played those games. So he had all kinds of times to throw the ball. And actually, the Bears ranked 7th, I think, last year in pass blocking. Kind of surprising if you just think about it. But if you're looking at San Francisco, that offensive line is terrible. And I don't really know what kind of time Brian Hoyer is going to have to throw the football. I know he doesn't have to do a ton to return value, but I'm not even sure what his touchdown upside is. So I guess that's the extent of the guys on my radar that I wanted to touch on.
I don't know if it totally went dark, but I can't see you, Justin. You went dark on me like you're in the witness protection program. We just need one of those voice disguisers. I can't see you, but we can hear you. Anyway, let's move on to running backs. Let me start with you, Sean, because clearly we have the chalk up top. David Johnson, Le'Veon Bell, cash game playable, obviously. When you get in the tournament, or what you want to do. Ezekiel Elliott playing week, great match, John. But again, we have some guys that are matchup proof. maybe he's one of those guys with that offensive line, his ability. We saw what he was capable of last year. On how far to go down to the next tier because there's a lot of interesting names in that group. Give me your thoughts real quick on do you like the top guys? Is there somebody else standing in that next group that you really like?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, Bell and DJ are both in the 9,000s, and rightfully so. They can, especially in PPR, they can catch it, they can run with it. They're going to get 20 to 30 carries or touches. Definitely cash game plays there, and you probably want some exposure in GPPs as well. But Zeke is actually interesting at 81 because Dallas should probably know that there's a chance that he's going to be gone the next few weeks or 6 weeks or whatever is going to happen there. So they might just ride and die with him, and he's going to be highly motivated. I mean, everyone's talking about the Giants' defensive line and how they're good. And, I mean, it's on both ends of the spectrum. Like, it's going to be a battle up front because Dallas has a great offensive line and Giants have a great defensive line. But if I get a highly motivated Ezekiel Elliott for 25 touches, I mean, I'm in for $8,000. And then in the 5,000s, I like Woodhead. We'll see if he can stay healthy for even one game. But if he does, I mean, we'll probably get at least like 5 or 6 targets or catches even.
Yeah, Terrence West hasn't shown a ton, even though a lot of people think he's going to be the bell cow here. And Woodhead is totally different. And Flacco loves, here in Baltimore, he gets called Captain Checkdown a lot, and Woodhead could end up being that guy.
Yeah, and I'm kind of skeptical on Lamar Miller, but we'll see. I'll definitely have some exposure in GPPs. And then you also have to look, if you're playing on DraftKings, you should look at Bilal Powell and Theo Riddick at in the 4,000s, like 4,700 and 4,900. They're target monsters as well, even with Amir Abdullah and Matt Forte. A lot of people I've seen are on Gurley at 6,000. I mean, I think that's interesting with against the Colts, but we'll see how that goes. He's not really a giant PPR guy. And another guy who I think you want to get some exposure to is Devontae Freeman at 7,000. Even if Tevin Coleman steals 30 or 40% of the carries, he's still game script favors Freeman a bunch, in my opinion.
Justin, give me your thoughts. If you want to start at the top and kind of work your way down, anybody else in that group, and I want to hear some people talk about Todd Gurley because he's a name that doesn't want to be mentioned. The Colts typically don't have a great run defense; they've been undersized, and I know Pagano's worked on that and trying to beef up that defensive line. But this could be an ugly game with Andrew Luck being out, and I don't think Gurley's going to bell cow and get a ton of carries. But I've seen a lot of people jumping all over him. Give me your thoughts on the running backs.
I love Gurley on DraftKings. I'm going to have a ton of exposure to him for sure. And you took the words out of my mouth. That game script is totally flipped. Vegas now favoring the Rams. They're going to want to run the football. He is a workhorse, but there's a lot of games last year that they just were playing from behind. And, yeah, that offensive line was bad. But there was actually there was 5 games that he got 20 or more carries last year, and he scored in 4 of 5 of those. There's no reason why he can't get at least 20 touches this week. Like you said, he could be the horse. And last year, the Colts ranked 28th and stuffed ranked. They gave up 4.8 yards a carry. They ranked 31st and second level ranked. So if Gurley can get to those linebackers, he's even got a chance to hit the home run. So I'm loving Gurley on DraftKings, not as much on FanDuel, but for sure on DraftKings, I'm loving Gurley. Over on FanDuel and kind of in both formats, LaShawn McCoy, it's amazing the kind of season he had, and he only had over 20 carries in 2 games last year. That's unbelievable. That Jets defense is totally depleted now with Sheldon Richardson gone. On Pro Football Focus, they don't have anybody in the front 7 that graded over 49, I think. So there's a real chance for McCoy to have a good game as well. DeMarco Murray should be in play too. That's a high point total. If the points don't come from Mariota, they got to come from Murray, you would think. So that might not be a bad idea to hedge your Mariota lines with a couple of DeMarco Murray lines. And those are some guys I like. Christian McCaffrey, I mean, on DraftKings, who knows what we're going to get out of him. He's definitely a lower floor kind of guy. But, I mean, he's so cheap, and that Niners defense isn't very good. And one more guy I'm looking at is Jordan Howard. I might have rattled off this statistic before. I think I'm looking at him more on DraftKings. But when Mike Glennon started in Tampa, 25% of his completions went to running backs. I got that from Warren Sharp in his book. That's unbelievable. And we know Jordan Howard has hands. Atlanta's run D is not very good. Desmond Trufant supposedly going to be all over Kevin White. We can get to that later. But those are some of the guys that are on my radar right now.
Yeah, it's funny you brought up Jordan Howard because I probably have the most exposure to him. I look at things and I talk about it from a gambling standpoint of these games and what I expect to be close. That Atlanta game, for some reason, I like the Bears. The Bears are getting a touchdown. So I like the Bears at home, and I think it's a nice spot for them. Everybody is in it in week one, so there's no letdowns at this point from the bad teams. The bad teams are all coming out to play and play hard, and the Bears are going to stink this year. But it would not shock me to see them keep this game close. And even if they don't, Jordan Howard is going to get a ton of action in this game, and I think he'll get a ton of checkdowns. He's going to get the ball and carries. And Atlanta's defense on the road, you take him out of the dome, I think it could get a little ugly for him. But that's just – he's a guy that I'm trying to differentiate and look at things. I think Jordan Howard's a guy I have in a bunch of my lineups. What about we were talking about rookie running backs. You brought up McCaffrey. Fournette, Dalvin Cook on Monday night. We saw what one rookie was able to do last night, Kareem Hunt, which, we talked about preseason, the guy that I absolutely loved, and I thought it was a perfect spot for him to go. Didn't expect him to do that against New England's defense, being brutally honest. But what do you make of these rookies real quick, Justin?
Wow. I mean, what a performance by Kareem Hunt. I think the whole world was shocked outside of, Chiefs Nation last night. I like Dalvin Cook. I do. I think he's not going to be a horse, but I don't think 15 carries is out of the question. And I know you said you like Bradford. Dalvin Cook can catch the football too. I don't normally play NFL on fantasy draft, but for some reason I took a look at it yesterday, and he is like 4,000 cheaper than most of these other running backs. So if you're playing a Monday night slate on fantasy drafts, check out Dalvin Cook. I didn't look into the Monday slates too much on DraftKings and FanDuel. What's he priced at over there, guys?
On DraftKings?
I think it's 5,900, 5,800.
It's not bad at all, man.
No.
I mean, Dalvin Cook's totally in play if you're playing a Monday slate, in my opinion.
Well, it's funny because I think everybody is going – I'll come to you with this, Sean, the revenge narrative with Peterson going up against his former team. That's all fine and dandy, but he's going up against one of the better run defenses in the league. I think from a football standpoint, Xavier Rhodes is going to be matched up on Michael Thomas. They can try to move him around all they want. And then now it's you start to think, where's Breeze going to go with it? It's one of the reasons why I really like Minnesota. I think they're going to be able to have their way with the linebackers going to Kyle Rudolph, the same thing in the running game, and that's going to set up the play action to go deep down the field. Stephon has been an absolute monster PR. We've seen weeks where he's had 10, 12 catches. Mm-hmm. I be one of those weeks personally, but again, it's something we'll have to look at Monday night. But kind of give me your thoughts, Sean. Adrian Peterson, are you playing that revenge narrative if you're playing Monday night slate?
Never. I didn't even look at any of the Saints running backs, to be honest.
It's hard to figure out what's going to happen.
Yeah, I didn't jot any of them down. Yeah.
Oh, that's fine.
I was going to say, people are kind of forgetting about Mark Ingram might have had a borderline career year last season. I mean, he had a monster season, so it's not like he's going to be totally out of the equation there. So Ingram's going to get his touches regardless of whoever's behind him too. I love Stephon Diggs though, man. He's got a decent matchup. He's totally healthy. And that's big for him. He's 100%, and I think Diggs is set up to have a nice night.
And Bradford's going to be comfortable. I mean, Bradford's setting that completion percentage. Throwing all those underneath passes. He can get it down the field. I'm not a big Sam Bradford guy. I didn't like giving up a first-round pick for him from Minnesota's side, but he played well last year. Give credit where credit's due. Let's switch over to the wide receivers here just a bit, and we'll talk to Sean. Actually, Justin, you start with this. Julio Jones, Odell Beckham. It's hard to figure out what's going to happen with Beckham, and you got to play accordingly, I guess, trying to figure out if he's going to go. Right now, they listed him as questionable. I'll say this. If he can go at all, he's going to go. He loves these nationally televised games. He loves being in the spotlight. He'll get that puppy shot up if he has to. Mm-hmm. Giants have a tough schedule to start the season. They can't afford – I think they have Denver and Green Bay, I believe, coming up. So they're going to face some tough teams. Give me your thoughts on the top-end receivers. Are you targeting any of these guys? Antonio Brown, another name that should be thrown out there as well.
I'll have some exposure, but I think it's going to be a weekend for me where I'm looking at a bunch of mid-tier guys. If Beckham doesn't go, obviously that opens the door for guys like Sterling Shepard, who's seriously cheap on a lot of formats. But for me, it's a lot of mid-price guys who I'm going to have a lot of exposure to. I might be, it might be chalky, whatever. I don't care. Larry Fitzgerald is in a elite matchup, and he has to be addressed. He's going up against Diggs from Diggs from Detroit, and I didn't even think this was a real statistic, but he allowed 90% of his targets to be caught last year. That's absolutely. I don't know how he's still working in the league. Honestly, he should be working the subway with like Freddie Mitchell. But Fitzgerald's going to be in the slot. He's lined up with Diggs almost the whole game. I think if you're looking for a high floor guy who's really cheap, and I get it, it's not Fitzgerald from 2007, but the guy can still ball, and they don't have a lot of targets out there. So I think Fitzgerald has a high floor, decent ceiling. He's the first guy I'm kind of looking at in that mid tier, and maybe one of the first guys I'm penciling in any lineup card.
Give me your take, Sean. Top end receivers here.
I mean, if Julio can't go, I can understand some exposure to Brown, but I'm not a huge fan of the game script. But I mean, it is the Browns. Who knows? They might try to win by 40. But a lot of these mid-tier guys, I mean, especially at 5,900 on DraftKings, you got Fitzgerald, you got Hopkins, you got Benjamin and Jeffrey. I mean, I don't really like Jeffrey or like Benjamin a whole lot, but I mean, just to have in general that amount of talent at that price is crazy. Hopkins could explode. I mean, it's more of a GPP play. Same with Benjamin, but if I'm going a little bit lower, I really like Pierre Garçon at 5,300 and Allen Robinson at 52. I mean, who else? I mean, I know it's Bortles, and even if Robinson gets 15 targets, he might only catch 6 balls, but he can run with it. I mean, there's not a whole lot there in Jacksonville offensively other than their run game. And then all the way at the bottom, believe it or not, I'm all in on Kendall Wright.
Yeah.
Call me insane. I mean, I don't think Kevin White's going to be working the slot too much, and he's like their only other receiver. I mean, and they're going to be throwing all game probably.
Yeah, there's not a ton there to work with, and everybody, once the injury happened to Cameron Meredith, everybody jumped aboard the Kendall Wright train. And I think if you're going to play him early on in the season, seeing what he's doing, you can get some value until they start adjusting what the prices are of these players. And if you're trying to fit in, the big time running backs, maybe a big quarterback, or even a couple of these receivers, Wright definitely fits the script. Justin, give me your thoughts. I think a lot of people are going to jump on the middle tier guys and pay up at running back. There is some uncertainty for some people out there, especially in cash games. But what other receivers you looking at? I like Pierre Garçon. I know people are circling that San Francisco-Carolina game. Marquise Goodwin is the burner to get down the field, but somebody's got to be catching the underneath stuff and be Mr. Reliable, and I think that's Garçon.
Yeah, I like a lot of the guys we just brought up. Kendall Wright, I think, is going to carry gigantic ownership on DraftKings, and he'll probably have decent ownership on FanDuel. And just think about it. He's 3.2. What's he got to do for 3 times value? 4 catches, 56 yards? I mean, that's totally doable. And Desmond Trufant is reportedly going to shadow Kevin White. And I know people are going to be on him, but that's a tough matchup. Trufant's really good. I wish there weren't as many mouths to feed in Washington, going back to that game, because Terrell Pryor has, according to Pro Football Focus, second best individual matchup in the league, going up against Jalen Mills. But there's a lot of mouths to feed there. We don't exactly know where the ball's going to go. Jordan Reed's healthy. He's listed as questionable. When is he listed as questionable? But he's going to play as far as I know. And they still got Jamison Crowder. But Pryor's one of those GPP guys, I think. We know what he could do. He never had a good quarterback. Another guy is going to be popular is Doug Baldwin just because of the matchup and everything. I wouldn't be lied if I had a weird gut feeling that he's a little bit scary. But he's in a good spot. And he's going up against Quentin Rollins, who's really bad. Allowed 71% of his targets to be caught. I think he's going to be more of a pricey guy, but I'm still going to have some exposure to Baldwin for sure. But a lot of those cheap guys you guys brought up are good plays. Kendall Wright, even Zach Miller might be worth a stab on DraftKings at tight end, just staying with that game.
Give me your thoughts. I want both your guys' thoughts on this as far as playing daily fantasy. Are you stacking up with a quarterback receiver, quarterback tight end every week? Are you trying to find the guy? Because Tennessee, if a lot of people are going Mariota, Tennessee's a hard. Right now, it's difficult. Rashard Matthews seems to be the safe bet, but you got young Corey Davis if he plays. The backs are going to catch some out of the backfield. Murray's passing game. Eric Decker's there now. There's a lot of mouths to feed. The same thing, Oakland. They're adding in if you're on Derek Carr, Jared Cook's there now, and you got Amari Cooper, Michael Crabtree. And I mean, you can go from team to team and do this, but are you stacking a lot, Justin?
personally, I think for cash games, I don't necessarily think you have to. But it definitely limits your upside, especially in GPPs. I think you need at least one kind of connection, whether it's if you go in a little more contrarian, if you like the number 2 receivers matchup and think he'll get a little bit of volume, then yeah, put Mariota with Rashard Matthews or something like that. But the Tennessee situation is definitely interesting because, like you guys said earlier, Mariota is going to be pretty popular, but you don't know where the ball's going. You could say that case about everybody. You could say that about Aaron Rodgers. Where's the ball going to go? But Aaron Rodgers is, I would say, more likely than the others to score the most points. So I don't think there's anything wrong in cash games to not exactly stack.
Yeah. What about you, Sean?
Exactly what he said. I mean, in cash games, you don't necessarily have to. And so in some regards, I don't recommend it in cash games. Like, if you can get a cheap quarterback that gets 3x, like Savage or Wentz or Manning or something, like, why not if you can pay up for Bell or Johnson? But in GPPs, I mean, a lot of people are going to have, Carr to Cooper, Ryan to Julio, Manning to Beckham or Marshall. So it depends. I mean, some of these guys that you might like, let's just go with Wentz. I mean, a lot of people are going to have Ertz anyway, but let me give a better example. Like, if you go Aaron Rodgers for cash games because he's only 7,000, you don't have to take one of those 3 receivers that you don't know what you're going to get right away and from where he's going to distribute. So in cash games, like, that's perfectly fine to go like Cam Newton or Aaron Rodgers and not take a receiver like Kelvin Benjamin or Jordy Nelson. I can understand that.
Let's move on to the tight end because, you just brought up Ertz. And we'll start with you, Sean, because Ertz is a guy I think a ton of people have circled this weekend. And, hearing that Justin likes Carson Wentz, and I think the reasoning, especially on what DraftKings, is justifiable. Ertz, to me, is the guy that you trust coming in. I mean, you got 2 new receivers in Alshon Jeffrey and Torrey Smith. Nelson Aguilar's there, but I don't know that I'm ready to rely on him. What I said last year, we don't know what the field's really going to look like. Wendell Smallwood going to get a ton of carries. I mean, does he bring some value to the table? LeGarrette Blount, I'm sure he's going to be the short yardage guy. But give me your thoughts on the tight end situation, because Ertz was a name that kept popping up. And I think a lot of people, again, it's Monday night, but Hunter Henry caught 8 touchdown passes last year. And towards the end of the season, I think coming into this year was a darling for everybody. But who are you looking at?
I mean, Ertz is my number 1 guy at 3,500. He just crushes Washington. I mean, he should get a bunch of targets if Norman's on Jeffrey. The run game is somewhat unreliable at the moment. We don't really know, but they do have a nice offensive line. Could get a bunch of red zone targets, but if I'm going elsewhere, I mean, I think Jimmy Graham could have a huge game. I like Fedorowicz in the red zone for 3,100. And call me insane, I don't know about the Browns. I don't know if Njoku is going to play. I mean, we got to keep an eye on that situation. But Seth DeValve had a crazy preseason at 2,500. We'll see. I mean, they got to move the ball somehow, right? I mean, yeah. I don't know how they're going to do it. And I don't really know if I'll believe in DeValve or whatever. But maybe I'll throw him in one GPP,
disregarding the matchups, but a lot of times when you look in this, we've got a lot of bad quarterbacks playing this weekend. A lot of guys that you wouldn't want starting for your team that are at the beginning of the season because there's a rookie that they're waiting to bring in, or there are actual rookies playing, or because of injury. One of the guys I had circled, and I'll probably have some exposure to him, is Jack Doyle. I think he's best friend there back and just kind of told he's going to look for him left and right. And I think he could get multiple catches and red zone targets. But again, as soon as everything came out, I started looking at the matchups and seeing what was best. I have a hard time getting off Zach Ertz no matter the ownership. But there are a couple other guys I'm looking at as well. Give me your thoughts, Justin.
Yeah, I like Ertz a lot for a lot of reasons. But another guy who is going to be fairly chalky is Greg Olsen. There's not a lot of reasons to not play him. Last year, he went off against the Niners. He did have a 78-yard catch. If you take that away, his numbers were kind of pedestrian. But according to Football Outsiders, San Fran is 4th worst over the deep middle part of the field. And Greg Olson's obviously, the main target there. If Benjamin's 1A, he's 1B or vice versa. So I'm on Greg Olson too, as well as Ertz. I like both head ends a lot.
Yeah. Any value here? I mean, we've got some Sunday Night Football. Jason Witten's there. I don't know that you're – sooner or later, the guy's got to hit the wall, but he's still been playing a ton. I brought up Doyle. Evan Ingram for the Giants, another rookie that kind of showed off in the preseason, or are you going to play it safe and kind of have your few guys that you like and stay with them, Justin?
Yeah, I'm going to play safe for the most part. A guy who I don't want to say is forgotten this week, definitely a little bit lower of a floor than Olsen, but probably same ceiling as Delaney Walker, especially against a defense that, the pass efficiency ranked like 25th last year. Corey Davis is going to be a situational guy. Eric Decker, they say he's 100%, but he didn't play in the preseason. He said he could have played week 4, but as of now, week 1, Delaney Walker is still kind of Mariota's go-to. It's going to change, but he's the other guy I'm kind of looking at.
Sean, you with Ertz and staying there, or you going to mix it up a bit?
I'll have mostly Ertz. I'll have some Graham and Fedorowicz, like I said, but I think Delaney Walker, that's a very fair point, and I was actually going to bring up Jack Doyle as well. I mean, who knows where Tolzien's going to go, but
that's the safety.
I'm also going to possibly have some exposure to Bennett and Charles Clay, but that's about it. I mean,
yeah, I think from some of the reading I had, Atlanta is not great against tight ends either. So looking at the Bears, Zach Miller was the guy there for a long period of time. Don't know if they're going to go double tights, how things work out, but it's hard for me. I love Jordan Howard this week. I think he's going to. I do think he's going to show off. But let's go. Let's stay with FanDuel here because we'll go the kicker route. Are you starting? Because look, what I do, it's a position I would fill unless there's some feeling I have, or if I know I'm going to. If I have a ton of money left over, I mean, Justin Tucker's a guy that in a lot of fantasy leagues season long, he outscored everybody, and he's very capable of kicking 50-yarders in bad weather, bad situations, outdoor. To me, if I have enough money, I always pay up for him. Plus, the Ravens' offense is inept, and they typically get down in that range and he'll boom them. But, is it just as simple as finding an indoor team or a game that you think is going to be high scoring? Sean, give me your thoughts. I don't know how playing the kicker at all.
I haven't even done any notes because I didn't think I was going to be playing much FanDuel. But just go with the games where you think teams aren't going to be able to punch it in, like the Bears. Like maybe the Bears are competent enough to get in the red zone, but they aren't competent enough to punch it in. I haven't really paid attention to the weather, but
yeah, I mean, obviously that's one of the first things you got to look at if you're going to play on FanDuel with kickers. Justin, you gonna be playing some FanDuel?
Yeah, maybe. Unfortunately, I hate picking kickers. I'm more of a FanDuel guy for like NBA and stuff. But I just hate that they have kickers. But kind of going hand in hand with what Sean said. Yeah, kind of look at maybe what team struggled in red zone efficiency last year, but you think might have a chance to move the ball, like the Bears. Or if you're fading a guy like David Johnson in your lineup, maybe take their kicker. Maybe he won't punch it in. If you have a lot of guys on one team, whatever your team you're stacking, you obviously don't want their kicker. So maybe you go with the kicker of whoever you think is going to be popular plays. Because if Le'Veon Bell or Brown ain't punching it in, Chris Boswell might have 3 or 4 field goals. So you just don't know. I hate to say it's kind of a crapshoot, but at certain times it definitely is. But you got your guys like Tucker and Dan Bailey, but it all comes down to who's moving the ball and not punching it in.
Kickers are people too. Yeah, you know what I do? I play a ton of FanDuel, and for a while because I was I'm still endorsing them. I still play a ton of FanDuel, and granted, I do like the way that DraftKings sets up for football season. But all that being said, when I look at kickers, I look at a bunch of different things. And sometimes when I'm punting, it's nice to have somebody late. I'll check the Sunday night game just to say, to have something to watch later on. But more times than not, I check to see what I have, and it's the last spot I fill. Weather's the most important thing. If it's a bad weather, and that's obviously wind, sometimes if it's snowing out, you'll get opportunities to kick the ball, but and teams will struggle offensively. But I'll do that from time to time. I don't mind the kickers. I know a lot of people want to get rid of them, but I got no problem. It's a good way to differentiate your lineup from other people. But we really have no idea what the hell they're going to do. I mean, you can look as much research as you want because I've had situations where I've had the best kicker on that slate and he ends up with 7 extra points instead of watching the game and it's 3rd and 18 and they get a 19-yard touchdown or something. You know, like those ridiculous things that happen where you feel like you're going to get some field goals and it doesn't happen. So
I just can't like stomach or justify a kicker separating me from like $800 or like 10 grand. I don't want to have to deal with it. I won't sleep that night if that happens.
That's crazy. Well, let's go to defense, and then we'll get into some other things here real quick. Justin, give me your thoughts as far as defense goes. You know, a lot of people are going to – I know in season long they streamed the Bills this week against the Jets because they think the Jets' offense is going to be putrid. But where are you looking defensively?
No, we can go back to the game you guys talked on that might have a lot of emotion, but they still got 2 poor quarterbacks playing. The Jags are really cheap on FanDuel. I don't know. Savage might make some mistakes, and we know Bortles loves making mistakes. So you can look at the Texans. You can look at the Texans defense. The other 2 defenses, other than the Bills, that I'm looking at. I don't hate the Rams, especially on DraftKings. The Colts offensive line allows a lot of hurries, and Tolzien's going to be playing like 50 snaps. So there's a potential recipe for disaster there. I know Aaron Donald's not playing, which is a big loss. I guess another guy that people are talking about, just backtracking, is Frank Gore. I'm not really high on him, but he is cheap if you're looking to punt. And Pittsburgh, another rookie quarterback making his first start of the year in Deshaun Kaiser. Those are kind of the defenses that'll be in the majority of my pool, I think.
What about you, Sean?
Yeah, I think the Bills will be the highest owned, and I mean, I'm not trying to be a Jets truther or anything. Like, I think they'll be garbage. But last year, I mean, they had the same running backs. Decker was hurt. Marshall was banged up. I mean, they had a Nunwa. The receivers are still really bad in regards to, like, a core. Like, they don't have a guy. But last year, the Bills gave up 30 points and 37 points to the Jets. I'm still on the Bills, and I'll have mostly Bills. But if you want to look elsewhere, I think Pittsburgh is going to outscore the Bills defense. And I'm not just saying that because it's the Browns and I'm a Browns fan, so I have to be like anti-Browns. But Deshaun Kaiser, when I was watching him in the preseason, he looked like he held the ball too long a few times. The Pittsburgh's front 7 is pretty fast. The Browns don't really have many wide receivers. And if Kaiser gets pressured, he might make a mistake, throw a pick. You know, he might take some sacks because he's holding the ball too long. But if you want to save like $1,000 on a defense to spend elsewhere, you could look at the Cardinals. Matt Stafford's been horrific against the Cardinals in his career, and the Colts at 2,700. They improved their secondary a little bit, and they're facing Jared Goff. I mean, we'll see what happens there. I mean, I think Gurley could have a nice game, but I'm just saying if you want to possibly lose out on a couple fantasy points but gain like $1,200 in salary, I mean, could work for you.
Well, I want to throw out – I talked about in the beginning, that Baltimore-Cincinnati game, and my whole take – I know how good this Baltimore defense is, and I think they're going to be phenomenal, and we don't know what's going to happen with Cincinnati's run game. But I think Baltimore's going to have one of the best run defenses in football, period. And their secondary is strong as well, and it's deep. And I think they're going to make Andy Dalton pretty one-dimensional when it comes down to it by taking away the run game and forcing them to do some things that they don't want. On the flip side, Joe Flacco has his worst game. He hasn't played at all the entire summer, and he has his worst games against the Cincinnati Bengals. His numbers are off the charts ridiculous. Jared Goff looked like Joe Montana when he plays against the Cincinnati Bengals. And that's even without Adam Pac-Man Jones and Vontaze Burfict. I think this is going to be a really low-scoring game, and I think both these defenses are going to have chances to quarterback and possibly get some turnovers and some scoop and scores, maybe a pick six. But I'll have some excitement for both defenses.
Yeah, that's not a bad take. I do like the Ravens defense a decent amount, and the Bengals a little bit. I didn't jot them down because I have my 6 defenses picked out, but. I think I looked at the game log, and I know I shouldn't be doing this, but I don't really see a huge upside for a huge upgrade anywhere for the Browns. I think Pittsburgh had 12 fantasy points one game against the Browns, and then they had 22. So, I mean, the floor seems pretty high with Pittsburgh as well. And we don't really know if the Jets are going to be turning it over a bunch, but they probably will.
Yeah. Any other thoughts, Justin, defensively?
That's pretty much it for me, man. My pool is going to be small in terms of defenses, especially with how cheap the Jaguars are on FanDuel. they're going to be pretty chalky as well. I mean, they're down at the bottom, and it's kind of a discrepancy. On DraftKings, they're like the 4th highest defense. So I think Jaguars are something to look at for FanDuel.
All right, let's talk about, a little bit of a hot take, a player that you think is going to go off. Maybe he's flying under the radar. We'll start with you, Justin, and kind of go from there. I mean, if you have somebody on Monday night you like, feel free to throw a couple out if you like something on Sunday as well.
I'm just really high on Todd Gurley. I know we brought him up for DraftKings. It's not exactly a hot take. I think he's going to score twice. Does that mean he's going to outscore David Johnson or Le'Veon Bell? Maybe not, because he's not utilized in the pass game, especially in DraftKings. I really think 20-point fantasy points out of Todd Gurley isn't out of the question. I think he's going to score twice. I really do. I think this game is I think people are going to remember who Todd Gurley really is. Not many times he had a chance when all the variables were in his favor last year. So I like Todd Gurley. At his price on DraftKings, for sure. I like him a lot.
Give me your thoughts, Sean. A hot take for this weekend.
I have a few wide receivers that are the boom or bust, but I was high on Allen Robinson with his volume. He's going to have to do a lot of things if the Jags want to be in this game late. T.Y. Hilton, everyone's going to – well, I shouldn't say everyone, but a lot of people will probably be dodging him because of that quarterback situation. But T.Y. Hilton's a target monster as well, and I think he could have the ability to go off. But I'm going to go on a whim and go with Lamar Miller. He's very average, but he could be a big part of their plan with Savage at quarterback and not much else going on in that offense. He might get the ball a lot, and we've seen his upside in the past, even though it's very rare.
All right, real quick, just because I love the Vikings on Monday night, I think Sam Bradford goes off. I can't even believe I'm saying that, but I think Sam Bradford's going to have a phenomenal night Monday night. So I'm leaning there. You already heard me talk about Jordan Howard and how much I love him against the Falcons. I think he's going to catch a ton of balls out of the backfield. I think he punches one or two in against the Falcons as well. I don't trust that defense outside. I mean, their defense to me is built just like the old Colts defenses. It's predicated on having a lead, having speed, getting after the quarterback. You put them out and you put them on a slow field, and I think they become very ordinary. So I think Chicago, even though they don't have a ton of weapons, will be able to keep that game close, and the primary weapon is going to be Jordan Howard. And lastly, looking at receivers, you were talking about everybody being on Larry Fitzgerald and Doug Baldwin, those names up, and I think all those guys are kind of in the mix. Pierre Garcia, I just think he's going to get a ton of targets in the game against Carolina, where to me most people are going to be targeting some of the bigger names on Carolina's side. But I always, in a bunch of these, taking the best receivers on bad teams and hoping that they're getting their ass kicked, and I'm getting those cheap fantasy points in the fourth quarter, i.e. what Blake Bortles, when people thought he was Elvis Grbac after Elvis Grbac. I mean, when he was back with the Chiefs, he had a 4,000-yard season back when that was the number to reach by, throwing for 200 yards in the fourth quarter when his teams were down by 21 points. So I don't know. I think Garcon's going to be the target there and the guy to take a look at. And I think Carlos Hyde could actually factor in that game as well. But it's kind of – you see a lot of experts in that game, but they're all going after the likes of Christian McCaffrey and even the quarterbacks and Kelvin Benjamin or Greg Olsen. And that's fine. They all could blow up, but I like to be a little bit different and go contrarian, but I think Garcon's going to have a good week.
Yeah, I'm on Garcon this week too, and we forgot to bring up the Darren Sproles punt of the week. I mean, he's allegedly going to get a decent amount of touches. He's only 3,900, so we'll see. I mean, I might have some.
Justin, any last thoughts before we get out of here?
One guy we didn't bring up is Jordan Reed, I guess. That Kirk Cousins is going to sling the ball. Sean, I'm sure you might have some Jordan Reed paired with some Cousins in certain places, but he's a tight end we didn't bring up. And when he's healthy, he's top 3 tight end in the league, no question about it. He's normally not healthy, though. That's the problem. But it's week 1, so your expectations have to be, I guess, a little bit higher than usual. So Jordan Reed could be the guy that's low owned at that position and have a good day there on Sunday.
Sean, anything else?
Decker and Macklin are only 5,000. Take a look. I mean, I know they didn't really play in the preseason, but I mean, those are solid guys throughout their careers. We'll see.
All right, good stuff. Guys, we'll be back again next week doing this, and stay tuned. Check out Daily Roto Sharks. Go in there for all your needs. Sheet Squad, I mean, they're going to be killing it. We were talking about Ben. Ben was putting in all this work, setting up the sheets, and I'm looking forward to working with you guys and making some money this year. sharing some of this knowledge. And that's what's great about this, getting involved with a group like Daily Roto Sharks. So look forward to the podcast. I'll be tweeting this stuff out, sending it out to everybody, and we'll be talking again next week. We'll do this every Friday at 11 a.m. for people that want to watch live, and we'll make sure we get the information out there and keep you posted. Thanks, guys.
Yeah, cool.